Searching the internet, looking to network, and hitting the pavement, we've done the work to help you get ready for your next job. We've got the experts and the latest tips, and we've got you. This is Job Hunt Cleveland. Hi, and welcome to Job Hunt Cleveland. I'm Mark Gomska. For the next half hour, we'll help you not only find and capture a new job, but also discover ways that you can enjoy and find satisfaction and maybe advance in your current career. Joining me today is Peter Pritchard of Peter Pritchard Consulting and Hiring Advisory. Peter, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you on Job Hunt Cleveland. You've been a recruiter for 14 years. So tell me, what is a headhunter anyway? Does a headhunter find jobs for job seekers, or how does it work?
Well, Mark, a headhunter is also called an executive recruiter or a corporate recruiter. And we help find candidates for companies that are in hiring situations where their own best efforts, or perhaps just placing an ad, is not going to develop the best candidate choices for them. So we have to go out and actually source more candidates or better candidates for them and present those candidates to the hiring leaders at those companies.
Okay, so Peter, everybody wants a recruiter to find them with the great job that they can't refuse, with all kinds of money, all kinds of perks, and maybe a trip to Bora Bora or two. But how does a job seeker actually get visible to an executive recruiter? What do you do?
Right. Well, actually, we don't find them jobs. And the best advice I can give to anyone looking for a job is to understand that they have to do the heavy lifting. In the past, the networking was all about asking your neighbor or asking, your former boss or colleagues, perhaps someone, that through the child's baseball team, a recruiter, if you had the good fortune of meeting a recruiter, if they had a job that they could apply for. But that was really asking them to do the work for you. And since the late 90s, with the advent of the internet, everything's changed. And with EEOC requirements from Congress, all of these companies' hiring activities are audited. So they're real particular about doing it right. And they post their jobs everywhere so that everyone has equal access to those jobs. So when a job seeker is looking for work, it's really incumbent upon them to go find those opportunities as much as possible. Now, in the case of a recruiter, we are out there sourcing to find them first, if you will. And that's where we come in and perhaps do the better job for the hiring company's best interest.
Okay, Peter, I think I understand. But one thing I'm unclear of, how do you get paid? Does a job seeker pay you to represent them?
No, they do not. That was a personnel agency back in the 1940s and 50s that did that kind of thing. We are paid strictly by the hiring company. And so technically we work for the hiring company. We're a little bit like a realtor who's had a listing. They technically work for the one selling the home. So we're working for the one who is selling the opportunity, if you will. But the candidate still is someone that we're highly interested in, and we want what's in everyone's best interest, or it's just going to blow up. It doesn't do my reputation any good, and it doesn't help my client if a person comes and doesn't work out. So I truly want to find the best available people, and all recruiters should have that kind of interest that really works for both sides. But in just short, no, we are never paid by the candidate.
Okay, so your fee is paid by the employer that's looking for top talent that you're delivering.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
I gotcha. Now, I am really curious about something. Is it a good idea for a job seeker to sign up with a whole bunch of recruiters to increase their odds? Will that help them? Will they be successful?
Well, I don't think there's just a one-size-fits-all answer for that, honestly, Mark. I mean, once again, I think the person that does that is looking for low hanging fruit, and they're trying to avoid doing the work that's really supposed to be on their shoulders predominantly. They need to be working all that they can to find the best available opportunities. And that to the degree that they want a headhunter or headhunters to help them find jobs, they need to make themselves be able to be found. If they're not on LinkedIn, that's a big, big mistake. LinkedIn is what is to the professional networking community what Facebook is to the personal, the families, the social. They're really without competition. And so all over America, all over the world, people are putting their profiles on LinkedIn in order that people can network with them to enhance what they're trying to accomplish while they're employed, but also to be able to be found when they're looking for opportunities. And whether it's a headhunter working outside of a company or an internal recruiter in the HR department, because of course, most of these big companies do have internal recruiters as well, you have to be able to find you. You want to have a very good picture on LinkedIn and a good description of your best, education and talent and experience, and all of that's right there. And then you want to be posting your resume on Indeed and on ZipRecruiter, perhaps on Monster Career Board. I think Indeed's now the biggest, and you want the resume to be factual, not necessarily comprehensive. Nothing in it should ever be erroneous, but you don't want to just get into a lot of things that people are not going to read. They just aren't going to do it. You want to have the bullet points and the best facts that will lead people to you and that opportunity.
Okay, Peter. So it's really, really important to be represented on LinkedIn so you can be found. That's a good
Mm-hmm.
thing to do. What's on the other side of the fence that you should never, 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 never do to work effectively with an executive recruiter?
Well, I mean, for one thing is you want to respect that recruiter and respect that recruiter's time. And once again, never give the impression like you expect that recruiter to be doing work for you in a way that's just inappropriate, things that they are responsible for. You want to be polite. You want to say, hey, do you mind looking at my resume and letting me know if it could be improved upon? You want to ask questions of that recruiter, like, how can I best advance myself? You want to be teachable when it comes to having an interview, um, letting them know that you recognize that there's usually competition for the position, and ask them questions like, how might I best advance myself among some other candidates that they will be talking to? The fact of the matter is the recruiter usually has some inside information. So that's a very good question, because they could tell you, well, here's the itch that really needs to be scratched. And by the way, there's just some basics like being taught not to talk too much. That will end an interview real quickly if the person is just dominating the interview instead of that back and forth cadence that just shows the professionalism and the courtesy that they're going to want in an employee.
Okay, gotcha, Peter. So, just out of curiosity, is your job over once you set up an interview? Is that it?
No, no, we're kind of hand holding or, co-advising both candidate and the hiring leaders throughout the process. And it's very important when someone goes to an interview that a recruiter has provided that they follow up immediately. I mean, traffic permitting, maybe they can call from their car, maybe they can't. But either way, even from the parking lot before they leave or when they get back to their home or office, to give important feedback to the recruiter about that interview and how they feel about the opportunity. Are they as interested in it now as they were before they went on the interview? Things like that.
Gotcha.
Because we work for the company, it's really important that we talk to the candidate before we talk to the company after an interview. To call up one of my clients after they've interviewed a candidate and say, hey, how did the interview go? What did you think of him or her? And then were they to ask me, is the person still as interested as when they came in? And I say, I don't know, I've had not talked to them. Well, that's pretty sloppy.
Okay, so with a couple minutes left, let's talk about money. Okay, can a executive recruiter ever help to get more money, or do they just tend to kind of lowball the deal? So present an employer with a deal they can't refuse because it's so economical. Could they ever get more money?
Yeah, they absolutely can. And that's something that should be really talked about up front so that the candidate and the recruiter have that confidential conversation, and the recruiter really knows what's the number you're looking for, what's going to make you feel satisfied and respected, and really have this opportunity be fully appealing and an offer that you would accept. That's not something that should be talked about late in the process. So the recruiter needs to know right up front, what are we looking for in your best interest, and whether that manufacturer or services company, what have you, even has that wherewithal in their budget, that we're all on the same page.
Okay. So it's your job to deliver a number of qualified candidates, maybe a slate of qualified candidates. However, despite everyone's interest and excitement, only one person gets the offer. Everybody else gets the thanks, but no. How do you handle that? How do you let the job seeker down who didn't get the job offer?
Well, at the beginning of It's a Wonderful Life, the angel's being sent to Earth, and he asks his supervisor to help George Bailey out. Is he sick? And the supervisor says, no, worse, discouraged. So the last thing I ever want to do is discourage anyone, because people have to stay motivated and they have to stay affirmed so that they can keep on trying. And so I like to tell people they were the silver medalist, and just that, here's where perhaps you could do better next time. I literally told someone earlier this week that they were parsing between A and A plus, and they've gone with the other candidate.
Well, Peter, you're an A-plus recruiter, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for getting together today for Job Hunt Cleveland.
Thank you, Mark. I enjoyed the conversation.
Joining me now is Dr. Kristen Tull, president of Pradco. Pradco can help you select, develop, and retain employees. Kristen is a nationally recognized executive coach, an author, a business leader. She's got amazing credentials, and I can't wait to hear her tell us a little bit about how to manage stress, just the topic of stress and thinking about it and finding the elusive work-life balance. I've got to tell you, Kristen, it was more stressful just thinking about it. My gosh, how does stress impact employees in the workplace?
Well, that is a great question, and boy, does it ever. So a lot of times people think that if there's some stress, it's a good thing, and that's actually true. There could be a positive, but for the most part, and I think what you're asking me about more so is, the negative stress that people experience. There are a lot of things that stress does to us. It affects our attention, our concentration, our overall feeling of well-being, and certainly productivity can suffer when people are under a lot of stress.
So, as an employer and as an executive coach, what are the signs that you look for to see if stress is really getting out of hand?
Yeah, good question. So for one thing, if otherwise good performers are, slipping a little bit here and there, struggling to miss a deadline, and just not seeming as engaged as usual, that's one good sign. Another sign that you can pick up more in a one-on-one conversation, if people are feeling overwhelmed or exhausted. I know I ask people questions about, how are you sleeping? Are you able to concentrate? Do you feel overwhelmed at times? And those feelings often are triggers of stress and potential burnout, a little bit down the road.
Okay, so what if they feel all those things? They have trouble
Mhm.
sleeping, they're feeling overwhelmed, and despite that, they're not in a position to walk away from work and stress, head for a sunny beach and dig their
Yeah.
feet into the sand and just chill it out. How can you manage stress without getting fired?
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So I think the main thing or the first thing is to figure out what are the triggers. So for me, I feel most stressed on days where there are meeting after meeting, not any breaks throughout the day. Other times it's, too many outside responsibilities interfering in my ability to fulfill my responsibilities. So I think it's a matter of what's the stress coming from and what can be done. Because agreed, we can't walk away from our jobs, but there are small things that people can do to give themselves more a feeling of control, or a feeling of being, more successful in carrying out their duties.
So, first of all, look to the source and figure
Mhm.
out what are the triggers that are making you feel stressed and just so tight. I'm kind of
Yep.
curious, do men handle stress differently than women? Is there a gender difference that you've observed?
Yeah. So if you look into the research, yes, there are differences. So women tend to handle stress more on an emotional level. We look to ourselves for, what are we doing to contribute to it? We're more likely to ask for help and to talk to other people about it. Men, on the other hand, tend to handle stress, again, in the research, by being more problem solving oriented and having more frustration and anger than like disappointment or discouragement, which is more how women process it. I wonder though, is it just that women are more willing to report higher levels of stress than men, or do we really have more because of our demands on us? The different thing, excuse me, the different things we have to deal with in our lives, and not that men don't have the same thing, but that can sometimes be the reason. In my experience, though, at Pradco, when we do research on gender issues, we have a program for women leaders. It's more person specific than gender specific, because I can know a woman that handles stress one way and another woman who handles it another way. So it's really more individualistic than I think gender specific.
So, Dr. Tull, for the last couple of years, here's a little news flash. We've dealt with this COVID
Yeah.
stuff. And that's caused a lot of people to work remotely, maybe leave an office. And I'm curious, and now we're trying to bring them back to the
Yeah.
office, perhaps, or maybe design some sort of custom hybrid setup. Has that added a whole different set of stresses? Because I feel like COVID's impacted our work, our home life, our recreation. What kind of impact have you seen?
Yeah. So sort of two extremes. So on the downside, like on the negative side, people who have had significant health issues, significant loss, they haven't been able to be with their families during difficult times. I mean, obviously those are huge stressors, and there's not much to be done about that. For others, though, who didn't have those types of problems, it's actually been a breath of fresh air in some ways. People are more comfortable to ask for what they need. People had time to spend with their families, and they now know there's an alternative to working, 8 to 5 in an office building, or in this room here. I have more flexibility and am able to prioritize differently. So, honestly, short of those really catastrophic things that I mentioned in the beginning, it's had some good effects on the workplace and employers, and how people can ask for what they need.
And now many of us are facing that commute, sometimes a long commute that we
Right.
weren't sad to be missing out on over the last couple years. Do you see new stressors that have come into play?
Huh. So I think not having the commute is a huge relief. And it's now worse than it was before for people who have to do it, because now they know the difference of not, and the time it saves, and the hassle of the traffic and things like that. Um, I think that for places that don't allow flexibility or hybrid work environments, whereas people experienced it during COVID, that's been a bit of a derailer in terms of people's comfort with their jobs or engagement overall.
Gotcha. Let's talk a little bit about the elusive work-life balance.
Yeah.
Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE, is quoted as saying, "There is no work-life balance. There are work-life choices. You make them and they have consequences."
Mhm.
Dr.
Yes.
Tall, is there such thing as work-life balance, and how do you get it?
Yeah. So, I think that more than ever, it's a blend. So I don't see it as like going for balance. I see it more as it's life and work is a part of it, family's a part of it. Even having my own company, I still think that work is a way to provide for my regular life. So I do strongly believe that there are choices. And for example, I have a daughter that's a freshman in college, so we've gone a few times to see her. She's on the dance team, so there's reasons for us to go so early. But I know if I'm out Thursday and Friday, I'm going to have a pretty stressful Monday through Wednesday. But because I chose that, and I want to not have to be connected when I'm off with a family commitment, that's my choice, and it's not as bad to manage because I was able to make it. So, I think, the other thing I would say is that people can manage a lot of stress for a time. We measure capacity here at Pradco. We want to make sure people aren't overworked. People can do a lot for a few weeks, but then there needs to be an off time or an off week or at least a few off days for people to rejuvenate. Without that, if it's just steady, that's where the burnout's like right around the corner.
So I'm hearing you say there's a time for hyper, let's get after it, but that's not sustainable. And
Exactly.
we need to have an okay feeling for we're going to relax a little bit. Do you have some
Yes.
particular tips on how to reduce stress other than the timing and the cycling through heavy workload and then a more relaxed time?
Yep. I think if you were able to figure out what your triggers are, so like I mentioned, mine, for example, is too many meetings with no breaks. I spend a pretty significant amount of time looking at my calendar, both at work and at home, to make sure that it's doable. So if I look at that, I feel like I'm in control and I can make choices about I don't need to be there. I can be there for part of it. Maybe it's 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes. So I think being proactive about time management makes a huge difference. Um, I also think that there could be things that people are doing that they're just doing it out of a habit. And if you really ask yourself, is this adding value still? Should I still do it? Maybe not. Um, and further, this next point, I just think is so important. Many of us who are leaders, who have roles, who are high achievers, we have very high expectations. So I would say probably, 50% of the people that I coach that are having stress and anxiety related to work stuff, we do it to ourselves a lot of times. It's not even somebody else asking it of us. We ask it of ourselves. So we should
So,
ask of ourselves the same alternative question. What can I do to make it better? Because there are things. Redefining expectations, recognizing that if you do the best you can do in a given day, the rest will likely just be fine to be handled tomorrow. Some exceptions, but not always.
so let's say that I made a resolution and I said, I'm
Yeah.
going to have better work-life balance. I'm also going to eat less, exercise more, and have kale at several meals every week.
Ugh.
And I start off with the right intention, but then something knocks me off the track and I feel defeated. I feel like there's more stress than ever. We've got a minute to go, Dr. Tull. Can
Yeah.
you give me some help here?
Yes. Well, I will try. I don't like kale either. I would say small things. One small decision can have a significant impact on things. So that's too many all at once. If you decide to shut off your computer at 9, if you decide to take a 20-minute break at lunch, it's those small decisions that can equal better feeling of control and just better satisfaction at work.
So there's little things that can add up to give us more stress, but there's also little modifications or changes or small decisions we can make that will reduce
Yes,
the stress.
exactly.
We've just Thank you so much for your time today. You've really shared some great insights One final word on reducing stress.
Just do the best you can do in a given day, and that's all that we can really do. So give a good effort and be satisfied with that.
I feel better already. Thank you
Oh,
for
yeah.
your time. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mark.
Finding a job can be challenging. We hope that we've been helpful to you in getting on the path to success. Thank you for watching Job Hunt Cleveland. I'm Mark Gonska.